Welcome back to the American Presidency Unfiltered, the show where we take the quirks, oddities, and accidental innovations of America's commanders-in-chief and put them under the spotlight. I'm your host, Brad Pitzl, from Presidents.website. Here with the story about how one of our lesser-remembered presidents managed to give the English language its most famous two letters, O and K. Yes, folks, today we're talking about Martin Van Buren, the 8th President of the United States, the dapper statesman from Kinderhook, New York. He was known as Old Kinderhook, a name that not only became his campaign brand in 1840, but also sparked the creation of the term OK. That's right, the next time you text your friend OK to confirm dinner plans, you've got Van Buren to thank. And like any good political story, it's a mix of genius branding, elite image problems, and an economy in free fall, all wrapped up in one episode. Today's episode is brought to you by politicaltradingcards.com. Grab a piece of history with the latest trading cards from the left and the right. politicaltradingcards.com. Martin Van Buren was born in Kinderhook, New York, a Dutch settled town where even today you'll find windmills and a colonial charm. Locals started calling him Old Kinderhook, a nickname he eventually embraced. Now, unlike some nicknames, I'm looking at you, Tipica and Tyler too, Old Kinderhook had a certain branding quality to it. Short, catchy, easy to slap on banners. And unlike Honest Abe or Silent Cal, it wasn't just descriptive, it was geographic, tying Van Buren to his roots. But here's where it gets fun. During his 1840 re-election campaign, Van Buren's supporters formed clubs called the OK Clubs. They'd chant OK at his rallies, plaster the letters on signs, and suddenly two little letters became shorthand for supporting the president. It was slick, it was clever, and it was one of their earliest examples of political marketing. Dare I say, it even looked modern. Think about it. Long before hashtags, slogans, or even bumper stickers, Americans already were boiling down politics into bite-sized, shareable content. Van Buren basically invented the campaign meme. The 1840 election was brutal. Van Buren, a polished political insider, faced off against William Henry Harrison, the log cabin and hard cider candidate. Harrison's team painted him as the man of the people, while Van Buren got cast as an old, out-of-touch elitist, sipping champagne in silk slippers. The OK Clubs were Van Buren's counterattack, a way to energize younger voters with a simple, catchy brand. Imagine groups of enthusiastic supporters meeting up, chanting OK over and over. It sounds almost like today's campaign rallies where you hear, "Yes, we can," or "Make America Great Again." But let's be real. If Van Buren ran today, his slogan would probably be reduced to an emoji. Maybe just the OK emoji or the classic K, which, let's face it, is way more passive-aggressive. And here's the irony. While Van Buren's supporters were pioneering political branding, his opponents mocked him mercilessly. They said OK really stood for out of cash because of the economic depression. Turns out, political trolling is older than the telegraph. Unfortunately for Van Buren, no amount of clever branding could save him from the harsh reality of the economy. The Panic of 1837 had tanked banks, wiped out businesses, and left unemployment soaring. By the time the 1840 election rolled around, Van Buren was stuck defending policies that made him look like the face of misery. The OK Clubs kept cheering, the banners kept waving, but slogans don't fill empty stomachs. When voters went to the polls, OK just wasn't enough. Harrison crushed Van Buren in what became one of the most lopsided elections of the 19th century. It's a reminder that branding matters, but substance, or at least a perception of it, matters more. You can't OK your way out of a depression. Despite losing, Van Buren gave America something priceless: OK. What started as a nickname for Old Kinderhook spread beyond politics and seeped into everyday language. Newspapers picked it up, businesses adopted it, and soon OK became one of the most recognizable words in the world. Linguists argue about its exact origins. Some trace it to comical abbreviations in Boston newspapers, others to Van Buren's campaign. But there's no doubt that his 1840 clubs catapulted it into public consciousness. So the next time you say okay, think about Martin Van Buren, sitting in Kinderhook, watching his campaign unravel, but unknowingly giving the world the single most universal expression of agreement. That's a presidential legacy. And that's a wrap for this episode of the American Presidency Unfiltered. We dug into Martin Van Buren's accidental invention of OK and how it turned into the first viral campaign brand in U.S. history. If you enjoyed today's dive into presidential quirks, don't forget to rate, review, and share the podcast. It's the best way to help more people discover the strange, hilarious, and surprisingly modern stories hidden in America's past. I'm Brad Pitzl, reminding you that history isn't just about dusty documents and oil portraits. Sometimes it's about two-letter words you type 50 times a day. Until next time, stay curious, stay witty, and well, stay okay.